keeping? I mean, how's the lockdown been treating you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm well. Can't complain really.
MashaAllah, nice to see. Brother Paul is joining us all the way from Wolverhampton, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, near enough.
And Dr. Zahid is an East Londoner from Barking. How are you, Dr. Zahid?
I'm fine, thanks. Nice to be on the show. Nice to see you both. Brother Paul and Brother Rafiq, mashallah, good to see you again.
Yeah, your voice is a bit. Are you far from the mic?
Oh right, yeah. Shall I get a bit closer? Is that clearer?
Yeah, slightly clearer if you've got a headset.
I've got a headset. Like my headset.
Yeah.
That's gonna help.
Even better if you've got a headset.
I don't want to get too close to the screen.
Okay, so the topic today, and before I introduce our guests, a lot of us we probably been tuning in to news reports regarding the conversion of a very well-known and famous museum in Istanbul in Turkey, and that is the Hagia Sophia. And that is a very well-known historic site. It's a tourist attraction in Turkey. It's some 1,500 years old, so you're going back a long way. An amazing piece of architecture, and it was originally opened as the Church of Hagia Sophia, and it served as a Greek Orthodox cathedral, Christian cathedral, and then I believe it was briefly a Roman Catholic cathedral, and then it was converted into an Ottoman mosque. And sometime after the abolition of the Ottoman state, of the Ottoman Empire, in the early 1930s, its function was changed or converted into a secular museum, which is the way it has remained since. So it's completed in the year 537, so it's a very early structure. And at that time, just to give some background, it was the world's largest interior space and the first to employ a fully pendentive dome. So that's a dome built in either square or rectangular room or structure. So it's a piece, an amazing piece of architecture as well. And when Sultan Mehmed, when he captured Constantinople, and he renamed it, or it was renamed Istanbul, it became the capital of the Ottoman Empire. That was then converted into a mosque. When he entered the building, he was fascinated by it, and this was in the year 1453. So Sultan Mehmed, he then had it converted into a mosque. Now recently, or for some time, there have been efforts and there have been campaigns in Turkey to have it changed back from a museum back into a mosque. And that's had some opposition from, especially because Turkey is trying to become a part of the EU. So it may see that it needs to kind of fit in with the rest of Europe, and it may not want to be seen as well, it may want to distance itself from its Islamic roots and origins, or its Islamic history. So there were a lot of obstacles towards that, but the new government, which has come in, well, it's not new any longer, but the current government under Tayyip Erdogan, it has pushed for this, and it just literally a couple of days ago put forward a motion to have it converted back into a mosque. So yeah, guys, let me introduce our guests. Brother Paul Armstrong. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Paul. Can you speak into the mic? I just want to make sure that your sound's coming through okay.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Okay,
Can
yeah.
you hear? Okay.
Yeah, that's loud and clear. That's nice. So, Brother Paul, he's the managing director of the Association of British Muslims, and he's also a Muslim chaplain at the University of Birmingham. So nice for you to join us. I mean, I'd usually ask how your journey was into the studio, but with the technology we have, alhamdulillah. And so you're based near Wolverhampton currently, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm actually, technically I am in Wolverhampton, but I'm sort of in between Wolverhampton and Birmingham where I live. It's like that in the West Midlands,
Okay, brilliant. And also with me, as I mentioned earlier, Dr. Zahid Iqbal. He's a medical doctor by profession. He's a specialist in occupational medicine, and he's a member of the Executive Council of Minhaj al-Quran International UK, which is like an umbrella body for the Minhaj al-Quran centres or mosques throughout the UK. He's also the president of Al-Hidayah. And Al-Hidayah, it's an organisation, or you could say a sub-organisation, that worked on arranging Al-Hidayah retreats. And these were retreats, often in wonderful locations or booking a campus at a university, where young Muslims, particularly English-speaking Muslims, were able to acquire traditional Islamic knowledge with recognised scholars. And he had the opportunity of inviting Dr. Muhammad Tahir al-Qadri, Sheikh al-Islam, several times as well. And he's also president of the Peace Education Program, or PEP, which is also comes under the umbrella of Minhaj al-Quran International. So nice of you to join us. Who should I start with? Okay, has someone got a fan on? Oh, it's
not anymore.
Okay, brilliant.
Sounds like it's
or a Hoover. It sounds like a fan or a Hoover or a computer that needs some work doing on it. Okay, brilliant. Okay, so Dr. Zahid, what is your take on this? I mean, what do you make of it?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, first of all. Well, my take on this is that President Erdogan, he's taken a very provocative action, and I fear that this will set back or damage relationships between Muslims and Christians the world over. So, and I think it's an unnecessary act. It's not as if Turkey lacks mosques or places of worship. In fact, if you've been to that area, and I had the pleasure and the fortune visiting the Hagia Sophia last year or the year before, and just literally opposite is a massive mosque built by the Ottoman Caliph, the Blue Mosque. Literally just less than 5-minute walk from there. And right opposite. So it's unnecessary. It's not as if Turkey needed another mosque.
But it's a sovereign country. I mean, it's up to them what they do with their buildings.
We'll come to that. I mean, yes, it's a sovereign country, but so was Iraq. Before Saddam Hussein, he could have argued he was heading a sovereign country, or China, which is persecuting so many Muslims, the Uyghur Muslims. They would argue that they are a sovereign country. So that in itself doesn't excuse wrongdoing. But more, I think more to the point, it's a political action that he's taken. It's actually it's a maneuver. It's a populist maneuver, in the same way that Trump might say or do certain things to get popularity amongst the masses. He's done exactly the same. He's done, and he's just trying to bolster his electoral appeal. And just let me finish. And probably most importantly, and I'm not claiming to be a scholar, but probably it's contrary to Islamic teachings.
Okay, we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that. We'll come back. So you think it's kind of politically motivated? Brother Paul, what's your take on that?
There's obviously a part of it that is. I don't dispute, but I think it's complicated, and we have to understand just how much a part of the Ottoman history and culture and religious expression that the Hagia Sophia occupies within Turkey. And I think this is something that people don't realize. And I mean, the building is so revered that the Ottomans actually modeled all of their mosques afterwards on the architecture of the Hagia Sophia.
Yeah.
So not only did they turn it into a mosque, but they turned their mosques into almost replicas or variations on the Hagia Sophia.
Yeah, I've just had the message come in. This is Adam from. He said, "I'm of Kurdish origin," and he said, "I think this is well overdue. It shouldn't have happened in the first place, so that it shouldn't have been converted into a museum in the first place. It's what represents it represents what Turkey is." So that kind of falls in line with what you're saying, and he felt that it should have been converted into a mosque. I mean, as I say, we've got a lot of views coming in and opinions, and a lot of them are supportive of this action. Sorry, continue, Brother Paul. Yeah.
Well, it's so rooted in the actual Turkish in Turkish Islam as a whole. It's quite astonishing actually how much this building is part of the actual national consciousness of Turkey. And as you say, it's not just Turkish Muslims. I mean, I've seen people posting who are Muslims outside of Turkey, but especially those which are connected to Turkish religious orders. They tend to have a very high view of this conversion and think that this is long overdue as well. So it's not just his Kurdish brother. I mean, it's interesting. It's a Kurdish brother who's mentioned this because
and he said he's not religious.
Agree with the Turkish government's decisions, which goes beyond that. I mean, but of course, when Turkey was the Ottoman Empire, and everybody was together. They were all Ottomans. It wasn't just.
We've got a call coming in. Okay. Assalamu alaikum. You're through to Revive FM 94.0. Can I take your name? Assalamu alaikum. Yeah. Yeah. Can I take your name?
It's Wayne Hassan.
Wayne Hassan, you're through to the Revive FM studio. We're discussing the Hagia Sophia. Could you give your comments? Where are you ringing from, Wayne?
I'm ringing from Manchester.
Manchester, mashallah. That's better than Wolverhampton for us. So nice of you to join us this evening. Do you have any comments?
Yes, my only question really is, so I specialize in constitutional and human rights law at the University of Leeds School of Law. And really I'm looking at it from a legal perspective. So I'm trying to analyze it from a constitutional and legal perspective.
Okay, that's interesting.
And whilst I do appreciate the two central arguments in favor of Turkey's decision, so specifically that Turkey possesses on the one hand legal ownership, and also that it's partially an issue, as one of your presenters has said, partially an issue of domestic sovereignty of Turkey. But equally, there are also, I think, other aspects to consider, such as equitable ownership, which is part and parcel of this concept of legal ownership. And really, this whole conception of equitable ownership, as I have called it, is based on the idea of world heritage. So since it was converted into a museum previously, and has now been listed, under the World Heritage Convention of 1972 as a proof or form of world heritage, this would give rise to this claim of equitable ownership, the idea that the world's people have some form of ownership in a collective sense to the Hagia Sophia. The other aspect, obviously, which is built into that is this notion of binding international law. So Turkey is a ratifying state of this World Heritage Convention of 1972, and therefore it's duty bound as a matter of international law to follow the processes, that are required in order to have this building removed or considered to be removed from World Heritage. And again, this arises because the international community has, contributed financially or otherwise to the preservation of the Hagia Sophia as a piece of World Heritage. So that's my own analysis of the situation.
Okay. Just before we leave you, but if that's the case, okay, that's fine. That sounds like an established law, or I'm not sure what the term would be. But then, for example, I visited India, not last year, the year before. I visited a mosque which was over 1,000 years old, and I struggled to pray in there, and that was converted into. It hasn't been converted into a museum. It's open for visitors, but that was its status was a mosque, and it was relegated to, and I call it relegated to a heritage site. And
was it listed under the World Heritage Convention and the Committee of UNESCO?
I haven't checked, but there were officials there. People who were working there were officials. They didn't allow visitors to take photos. But that was converted during colonial times. Now, no one asked the inhabitants of that area whether this site will now be, whether they would like their place of worship to be relegated to a heritage site. It just happened. It was used as a barracks for a short time. It became run down as a result, and then it became a heritage site. So that there was no kind of official process. That no one was consulted about it. So. The other side of it is the flip side of it is, whose decision was it? Who decided for it to be converted to a heritage site, and whose decision is it? But who has the final say?
Well, I do agree with you that the principle of consulting with relevant stakeholders is crucially important. And again, in that World Heritage Convention, it does embody that principle actually in its article. But I don't know how that particular mosque or is classified, or how it's listed, in international law per se. But it's another interesting issue which definitely should be highlighted as well.
Okay, brilliant. Brother Wayne, thank you so much for your input. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, that was all. That was my 2 cents on the issue. But I appreciate you holding this discussion. I think it's much needed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And help to clarify some of the issues. And that we can really reach, each of us can have our own opinions, and we can reasonably disagree. And that's perfectly legitimate to have reasonable disagreements in part of a pluralistic society.
Absolutely.
So yes, I think it's very important.
Thank you so much for taking your time out to join the studio, and it has. I've learned something new, and I'm sure our listeners have as well. Thank you so much. Inshallah ta'ala, stay tuned and take care of yourself. Inshallah, take care, brother.
Thank you.
Welcome, salam. Okay, so Brother Wayne, he put forward the idea that there is a body which all World Heritage sites have to, or stakeholders of its status, the stakeholders of the status of a World Heritage site are not just the current rulers of a country, but it's the worldwide community. We're going to take a quick short break. We'll continue on that theme, inshallah. Stay tuned, listeners, and we'll be back shortly. Assalamu alaikum.
Join the largest annual health feed campaign on the planet.
Can you hear me okay?
Million.
Rafiq, is it better? Because hello.
Money can save lives. participate from as little as £40. Or add an Eid gift for only £30. Donate, sacrifice, feed by choosing your Qurbani through Minhaj Welfare Foundation. Call us now on 0300 30 30 777 or visit us on minhajwelfare.org.
Amigos, the signature name when it comes to burgers and shakes. Our succulent burgers are prepared in front of you while you wait. Whether you go for our 6-ounce Mexican or our 10-ounce Texan, or you decide to go for our messy fries or our buffalo wings, the one thing you're guaranteed is quality. Dine in with your friends and family at 400 Cranbrook Road, Ganshill, or order in on Uber Eats, Just Eat or delivery. Amigos, hats off to great burgers.
Manjaro's Restaurant Ilford, the ultimate dining experience. Try our signature Parmesan chicken or our exclusive chicken supreme. Our recipes are based on a blend of African and Caribbean flavors. Check out our extensive menu online at manjaros.co.uk. Come and visit us at 213 to 215 Ilford Lane, Ilford, or call 0208 514 4455. Manjaro's, tasting is believing.
If you want to advertise your business on Revive FM, visit www.revivefm.co.uk. Alternatively, contact our sales team now on 079 44 56 5616. That's 079 44 56 5616.
Revive FM
94.0 on the radio,
on your mobile,
and online.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Hope you're well. You're tuned into Revive FM 94.0, and this is your host. It's Brother Rafiq. With me are Dr. Zahid from Barking and Brother Paul from Wolverhampton. We were joined a little while ago by a caller, Brother Wayne. He specializes in constitutional law. And he mentioned regarding the Hagia Sophia that it's of interest to the whole to the whole world. What happens to it. I mean, that raises the stakes. Brother Paul, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, of course it is of interest to the whole world, but that doesn't mean it can't be a mosque either. I mean, there's lots of places of worship in the world that are cathedrals or mosques that are used for that purpose, and people also visit them. I mean, as long as Turkey doesn't restrict people's access to the building and stop people from visiting, which, I mean, President Erdogan has explicitly said he wouldn't do that, and it would be open and also free to access, then that side of it shouldn't be an issue. I would think that it would be more of an issue depending on how they restore the building, rather than the access to the building, because obviously there is some Byzantine art in there which is quite unique, and depending on what they do about that, the latest that might be more of a concern, I would suspect, from a heritage perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the latest statement, I think, from Erdogan himself was that no architecture will be touched in the building, and any kind of pre-Islamic work or items that are there will be covered up during prayer times, but they will not be damaged or destroyed or removed from the building. So he said he's given his word to that, and it will be open for everyone to visit. So I think that should potentially
seems like a pretty reasonable compromise.
Reasonable, yeah. I mean, Dr. Zahid, what would you say?
Well, I go back to my point. I think this is a provocative act. There was no need to actually convert or change its status to a mosque. It was unnecessary, as I said. And a sister, I think, posted up a message, Sister Yasmin. I think she was posted a message in response to something I said earlier, that there are plenty of mosques already in Turkey, and that here we are. Isn't it better to have an increased number of masjids? Now, I'm not against increasing the number of masjids. The point I was trying to make is there is a mosque just literally a minute or a couple of minutes walk from there. It's facing the Hagia Sophia. It was the blue mosque that was constructed by the Ottomans. And it's a massive prayer area. I don't see the need for this particular monument to be changed into a mosque. As I said, I think it's a provocative act. It's there to generate controversy, and he's basically had some issues with in the last elections. His fortunes have declined, and I think he's trying to get the populist vote. And okay, fair enough. If the populace of Turkey in the end vote him in next time, or vote his party next time, it would have worked. It doesn't mean that it's the correct course of action. And I feel that we can argue, well, yeah, it will still be what's wrong. The stuff will still be there. It will still be. It won't be closed to visitors. But what was the point? There was no, as I said, there was no need. It's a political act, and I feel that as many of our Muslim brothers and sisters get sucked in by these sort of gestures, and actually have no benefit as such, but are there to, as I said, it's unfortunate that people use Islam or Islamic gestures.
Okay.
But this is no different.
Well, in terms of Turkey itself, there's been a bit of a backlash, especially from the EU or countries or members of I could say people attached to Parliament in different parts of the EU. There's been a bit of a backlash from them. But why weren't they why weren't they making such a fuss when Turkey was banning headscarves in universities and I mean that was converting a museum into a mosque. That's not infringing upon anyone's rights.
And a museum that was a mosque for 500 years, so it's only been a museum for about 86 years or something. So
it was the seat of Orthodox Christianity before it became a mosque. To be fair, so it was converted to a mosque. But look, two wrongs don't make a right. I understand. Sorry,
it's not been the seat of orthodoxy for half a millennium. I mean, no disrespect to the Orthodox Christians. I have no issue with them, but it's the reality.
Fair enough. I mean, it's still. I feel that the point that I made earlier was that it will set back relations between the Muslim communities and Christianity. Well, what is the point of that? We claim that Islam is a religion of peace. But look, going back to the earlier point. About the fuss that's being made about this compared to the fuss that was made when say what did you mention about the headscarves? Look, as I mentioned that two wrongs don't make a right. I understand that, and I fully sympathise with that view. Why make a fuss over this as opposed to other things that happen around the world? But that doesn't mean that. I think we have to be principled people and stick to principles. Just because just because you get a reaction that's not in the way we like it, that doesn't mean that the action is incorrect. I mean, let's put it this way: if we complain as Muslims all the time, and we would rightly complain if a place of worship was converted into a temple or from a mosque to whatever, and no doubt there have been instances like this around the world.
Okay. I've got a message that's come in from a brother Asif Shakur. He's dropped a message in. He's from East Ham. He said, "What about the building of a mosque in Trocadero in the heart of London? Would this be considered provocative?"
I don't. Well, that's what does that got to do with this? Well, it is provocative, but in the sense that it has caused controversy, but it's the right thing to do. It wasn't the Trocadero. If it conforms to planning standards, and if it, I wouldn't have classed the Trocadero in the same vein as the But the monumental piece of architecture that is an historic significance of a building like Hagia Sophia.
You mentioned something about the Uyghurs, the genocide of the Uyghurs in China. Now, I'm sorry, but using a place of worship that was designed to be built as a place of worship, even for a different religion, I would not put that in the same category as genocide. There's a big difference here.
Well,
so it's like
my point wasn't to compare this act to a genocide. The point I was trying to make was that using the argument that you run a sovereign country, that it doesn't apply. It doesn't matter if it doesn't give you all a license to do anything that you please. That was the point. So any head of state could say, well, this is a sovereign country. We wish to do this, that, the other. That was the point. I wasn't actually comparing this to a genocide by any means.
Well, that's good to know.
Brother Paul, Constantinople before before Sultan Mehmed entered, large parts of the city were falling into disrepair. Although the cathedral itself was apparently still looked after, there were funds set aside to keep it in good condition. It obviously made a good impression on the Ottomans when they entered and they see this wonderful palace. But as you rightly pointed out, it's a part of their, you can say, their legacy or history. And a message was forwarded to me by a brother Ali. He said, I don't know about the reliability of this, but Sultan Mehmed conquered Constantinople at the age of 21, and he purchased the property of Hagia Sophia from his personal wealth before converting it into a mosque. The details of the transaction are still stored in Turkish museums, and then there's a scan of apparently a document proving it. And apparently it was purchased, and it was a waqf, or an endowment was then created to look after it, and it's that was used to push for it to be converted from a museum to a mosque again. So, I mean, if we have a look at the legal side of it from a different angle, if this information is reliable, there's an endowment to look after this site. So I think whoever kind of is under that, is up to them what they do with it, isn't it?
Well, no, this is a very good point, because I mean, for, like I said, half a millennium it has been a mosque, and obviously all mosques have these, set up to look after it. I don't know. I've heard about this document and the sale of the church to the Sultan, but I haven't seen the documents myself, so I can't assess the authenticity of them. But if that is true, if that is the case, then obviously they have a very strong claim to it, irrespective of its history as the center of orthodoxy and stuff. If it was sold, it was sold. Just like today, buildings are sold. And I mean, even if a mosque was sold to a group of Christians and they turned it into a church, what issue could we possibly have with it? If it was sold, if really and genuinely, and the sale was concluded and both parties were happy, it's up to the people who bought it what they do with it then, because it's their property. I am a little concerned that this debate in Turkey between secularists and people who want the building turned back into a mosque has delayed a lot of the very important restoration work that is needed to be done to actually preserve the building itself. Because if that isn't done, then we could lose the building and it wouldn't be either a museum or a mosque. Absolutely. So, I mean, hopefully, I mean, if this decision means that restoration work will go ahead and the building will be preserved for posterity, then surely, even if there are people who aren't entirely happy with it being a mosque, surely even they should be happy that at least the building is preserved. Because this malaise that it had fallen into and it not being properly restored was
It starts to crumble.
not a good situation. And obviously, the fact that we know what Muslims are like, and especially when it comes to a building that has such importance for the Turkish people, the fact that it is turned back into a mosque is likely to actually attract more donations to preserve it and look after it as a mosque. So hopefully it will be well looked after. So from this perspective, hopefully there's something to be gained for the building and for its preservation.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Zahid, I've received a question specifically for yourself. This is from Mubin. Now, he's asking, so if you're against the conversion of the Hagia Sophia from a museum to a mosque, will you condemn the Sultan that originally turned it into a mosque from a cathedral? That's a different realm now.
Well, I mean, as Brother Paul said, that was about 500 years ago. I mean, it's something that is we're talking about the present, okay? The rights and wrongs of what was done in the past. I mean, let's leave those things aside. It may well be the case that he did something wrong, but that doesn't take from his other achievements. No one is perfect. No sultan, whether they're sultan or a pauper. So I think let's look at the here and now. It is a World Heritage Site. It's a cultural icon. It doesn't need it should be subject to restoration, regardless of whether it's a mosque or a museum. As Muslims, we're not Philistines. We should be. We do respect other cultures. We do respect monuments from other. Brother Paul rightly mentioned that this Hagia Sophia was the basis for much of the Ottoman architectural feats that came after. It was the inspiration. As Muslims, we've sought inspiration from many different cultures, whether it's in the subcontinent, whether it's the Ottomans, or anywhere else in the world. So, so as Muslims, we are preservers of heritage, whether that's Greek knowledge, whether it's Indian knowledge or Chinese knowledge that was preserved and then advanced. In the same way, we should be the guardians of the heritage of Christians, of other religions. So I feel that it's a real shame that the Turkish government is doing something like this. That kind of I think it shows Muslims in a pretty, or like to be perfectly honest.
I've just received another message. People are very quick to jump and criticize Turkey for converting the museum into a mosque. What about the hundreds of mosques that have been destroyed or ransacked, bulldozed all over the Balkans and the Baltic states? So we're talking about previous former, not just Ottoman territories, but also Tatar territories of the Volga Valley in southern Russia, the southern former USSR.
I have already. I understand this point, and I say again, two wrongs don't make a right. It's absolutely disgusting that mosques should be destroyed or converted to other places of.
It's happening today.
Well, absolutely. But let's just look at the argument. I'm not making a comparison here, but you see, people like Osama bin Laden would say, well, the Iraqi invasion, the Americans invaded Iraq as neo-imperialists, as crusaders, and therefore, we have a right to now take revenge. Eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. Now that it's the same argument. I'm not equating the two things, but it's the same sort of argument. Just because one side is doing something doesn't mean that it doesn't give us.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. But why aren't the EU?
This is kind of ignoring the fact that the building has been a mosque for 500 years.
It's
You
been
know,
there.
so, I mean, it's not like somebody just turned it into a mosque. It's kind of like a mosque in writing that's been a museum for 86 years because Ataturk at his time thought that was the right thing to do. But was he right? Was he wrong? I mean, the actual legal decision that happened in the Turkish court overturned Ataturk's decision.
I mean, Ataturk, you know, I know a lot of, and this is put a disclaimer on this, but he may be seen as the father of Turks, or maybe seen, maybe liked in the West, but he wasn't democratic. He was a dictator. You know, he was a military dictator.
I'm not defending Ataturk's action by any means. I think, as I said, we have to look at the here and now. It isn't a mosque at the moment. Okay, it may have been a mosque for 500 years. For like 59, it's been a museum. So let's look at the here and now. Let's look at the rights and wrongs now. Otherwise, we can go back to the whole.
Okay,
you know,
Dr. Zahid, another message that's coming through. In Russia, all religions, not just Islam, they were banned for almost 100 years during communist times. So a lot of the mosques at that time were either shut down or locked up or converted into museums. Since the lifting, or since communism is no longer there, should those mosques now no longer be reopened, or should those museums now no longer be brought back into service as mosques?
We're looking at I'm not actually. This isn't an argument about converting a museum into a mosque. I mean, we convert pubs into mosques, and we convert all sorts of things into mosques. This isn't an argument about whether something should become a mosque. We're talking about, as we've mentioned here, it's an iconic building. It has cultural significance the world over, not just for Muslims, for Christians as well, for Orthodox Christians and Christians around the world. They don't have to be Catholics or whoever. It's a completely different scale we're talking about, and we're also talking about a situation, a political decision that's being made that has nothing to do with the interests of Islam. That I feel. It's a political decision.
Yeah, but Father Paul, do you agree with that? Whether it's just a political move?
Well, obviously, it is a political move as well, but that doesn't mean that it's only a political move. I mean, the desire of a lot of Turkish people to return this building to being a mosque, which had been, one of Turkey's, certainly actually initially, it was its most important mosque for a very, very long time. And then the Blue Mosque was built, and then it was one of two very important mosques, two central mosques in the capital city of Turkey before the capital city moved to Ankara. So, I mean, it's like, yes, it's iconic, but it's iconic to the Ottomans. It's iconic to the Turks, as well as being iconic to the Orthodox. I mean, in a way, depending on how this is handled, it could actually turn out to be a good thing, because this building was built as a place of worship. It was dedicated to the Sophia, the holy wisdom of God. So, maybe if they could make a place available within this building that Orthodox Christians could also pray there, as well as it being a mosque, and then use it as a center for interfaith between Christians and Muslims. And then it's like, okay, people will still never be happy whatever you do, but maybe there's opportunities in this that could turn it into a good thing, depending on how it's handled, of course.
Yeah, I think that's a good take on it. I mean, that's yet another angle to look at it. Okay, question for Dr. Zahid.
Okay,
Hassan, he's just put. Hassan has just dropped a message. He said, "Okay, right now Al-Aqsa is owned by, it's under the control of Israel. Is that right, or should it go back to Palestine? I don't know how relevant it is, but is that right, or should it go back to Palestine because it's a place of worship for?"
It's already a mosque. People go there to pray. Muslims. They're not barred from praying there.
Yeah, but it's not the easiest of things to do, and then every so often.
Well, I mean, it's a disputed.
Originally, when it was a part of the British Empire, it was meant to be like a neutral area. Jerusalem was supposed to have been a neutral, not belonging to anyone. And
you're talking about basically. This isn't to do with I don't think it's a comparable situation. You're talking about one part of the struggle between Palestinians and Israelis, or the Israeli government. Disputed territory. That's something completely different. It still is a mosque, and people are allowed to pray. Oh, yes, they may have some difficulties there. I acknowledge that. I don't think it's the same kind of. It's not as analogous example.
Okay, so you think it's the wrong analogy. But Paul, do you want to add to
that? Sorry, my girls came in. What was it?
Someone by the name of Hassan has dropped a message in, and he's mentioned that the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is like the third hub.
Oh, yeah, I heard that part. Yeah.
Yeah.
But obviously, I mean, that's not barred from Muslims praying there at the moment. I would think a more comparison might be with the situation in Cordoba, where a church, a mosque, the Grand Mosque of Cordoba, was converted into a Catholic cathedral, and Muslims have been barred from praying there for a very long time. I'm not sure if there's any improvement in that in recent years, but I mean, that was one of the great cathedrals of the golden age of Islam. And it was just, I mean, even the kings of Spain were shocked by what the church did, because they thought it was a beautiful building, and it actually spoiled it by what they did.
Yeah. Then shall we convert that museum? Well, it's a museum now, back into a church.
Well, I mean,
it's a museum, then nobody can pray there. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to be happy with that, Muslims or Christians.
But compare it back to Al-Aqsa Mosque. So Muslims do have can pray in Al-Aqsa Mosque, but life is made terrible for them. It's not an easy task. There are checkpoints. There are armed security guards. We can debate whether they're under occupation or not, but it feels that way. And for people who have visited there, they know what it's like. But as for the Hagia Sophia, Christians are not going to be searched. They're not going to be standing in long queues. So why the discrepancy? Why not the outcry about what's happening in Al-Aqsa, and yet everyone's kind of focusing on Hagia Sophia?
This is just an example of whataboutery. Look, what about this? What about that? Let's just judge the thing on its own merits. Two things. What's happening in Palestine is abominable. And let's just agree on that. I don't agree with what Israel is doing in the Palestinian territories, or in actually annexing its plans to annex Palestine, or in fact actually moving the capital to Jerusalem. And these things are disagreeable to me. But that doesn't mean that why are we sort of holding a torch to those sort of standards of behaviour? We're Muslims. We should be behaving better. We should set an example to the rest of humanity as to how we should behave. So I don't. We can condemn what Israel is doing, but at the same time, that doesn't mean we have to behave in a way that's incorrect, or whether morally or religiously.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, that's a fair point. Would you like to add to that, Brother Paul?
I just don't see the comparison really, because I mean, people will still be allowed to visit it. It's going to be open to everybody.
Yeah.
It's just that Muslims are going to be allowed to pray there, which it has been quite restricted until now. Initially, it was completely banned for anybody to pray there. Then a small prayer area was opened up for Muslims and Orthodox Christians to pray there, but not in the main hall. I mean, if it's done sensitively, it could actually turn out to be a good thing. So I don't see what the issue really is from that perspective.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's that completely makes sense. I mean, just had a message from Brother Asif again. There are so many heritage sites, like the St. Nikolai Church in Greece. It was built by the Ottoman Caliph Sultan Suleiman as a mosque in the 1530s. And in 1926, it was converted from a mosque into a church and renamed St. Nikolai Church. The minaret was shortened to accommodate a bell tower and to accompany the church. Should this struck building be returned to Muslims?
Well, I have to go back. I don't agree with what necessarily happened, if that's what happened. But why should we use that as our standard of behaviour? Just because they did something doesn't mean we have to do exactly the same. Why do I have to keep saying this? Two wrongs don't make a right. That's just these sort of arguments are just an example of what's about shit.
What's happening today?
About the current. Look,
in India today, there is a concerted effort, without going into politics, but there is a right wing, or supposedly a right wing government in India, and they are campaigning, and there is a lot of fake news, a lot of literature, WhatsApp messages, viral messages. Now, I don't know whether they're deliberate but a lot of information is being spread, pushing and urging and informing people that certain sites were the birthplaces of Hindu gods. And there is a concerted effort there to make these places very difficult to visit. People are abused on their way to in some parts where Muslims are a very small minority. Muslims are scared to visit their local mosques. And I think it is important to raise awareness. I know it's not directly related, but I think there is a loop. Relationship in the sense that this is also going on. It's going on in the Balkans, in the Baltics, and specifically in India, in China, and I think now may be a good time to raise these points and say, okay, Turkey's done this. Can we also address such and such place?
Well, I would rather see President Erdogan address those issues than some kind of unnecessary provocative gestures such as this. I think if he wants to actually benefit the Muslims around the world and the Ummah, then why doesn't he address those things that are happening around the world? Turkey is not an insignificant country economically. It's a local superpower, you could say. It has clout, and I think he could well use his influence to bear on these things around the world to highlight them.
I'm gonna read out a quote. This is two quotes. The first is from Khalid ibn al-Walid. He was under the command of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, and he when he was sent to Iraq and Iran, he was strictly prohibited from demolishing churches and convents, and he was specifically instructed to allow the non-Muslim communities in those lands to beat the wooden clapper, which is like the bells, church bells they have, without any restrictions, except during the times of prayers. And they were allowed to take out their crucifixes during on the occasions of festivals. And this is mentioned in Kitab al-Kharaj of Abu Yusuf. And the last quote I want to mention is from Montgomery Watt. He's an Orientalist, and he wrote in his work, Islamic Political Thought, the Basic Concepts, that the Christians were probably better off as zimmis, which are like minorities living under Muslim Arab rulers, than they had been under the Byzantine Greeks. And that sounds surprising. And these quotes are from this work here, the Fatwa on Terrorism and Suicide Bombings by Sheikh al-Islam Dr. Muhammad Tahir al-Qadri. I mean, that's profound, to find that Christians were better off under Muslim rule. What would you say to that?
Well, that's a beautiful example. I mean, it's an example of why it's important for our leaders to be custodians of all types of religious buildings belonging to any religion, and should take care of monuments that have a significance to other people.
Yeah. It's going to be your last comment, Dr. Zahid, because we're out of time.
Well, I don't know. Listen, let me just. You've mentioned a book by Sheikh al-Islam, the Fatwa. There's an excellent book, The Relations of Muslims and Non-Muslims. Here, you just read one sentence from that. This is near the end. The message of Islam: the establishment of a global human society. The message of Islam is clear regarding global peace and mutual fairness. Islam is the foremost promoter and propagator of peace, justice and equality. Hence, we are to unite against extremism and religious fanaticism and root out terrorism. This is the time for every Muslim to become an embodiment of peace and harmony, love and affection. A Muslim is peace incarnate. He is to rise with the message of Allah's Messenger, which is the message of global peace. Now, I would say this action is against those principles. This action by President.
That's for discussion. Brother Paul, last comments, or if you want to make a quick reaction to what Dr. Zahid said.
I don't regard, returning a building that has been a mosque for the past 500 years to being a mosque again as being extreme in the slightest. I don't see. I can understand how Orthodox Christians may wish it was returned to being a church again, but I mean, it's ignoring the reality that it has been a mosque for 500 years, and it is so part of the Turkish culture and experience. Another point to consider is the fact that, if it hadn't been for the amount of work done on this building over those 500 years, it would have fallen down due to earthquakes. It has been well looked after. It has been restored. It has been strengthened. And a lot of the complex that exists now is actually the mosque complex that has been built by Muslims. So these are things that people need to reflect on, and not just think, okay, well, 500 years ago it used to be an Orthodox church, and so it's a terrible thing.
Sorry to interrupt, but I would say that it's the responsibility of a Muslim ruler.
We're out of time. We'll have to go for a part two.
Of a Muslim ruler to keep the
We'll have to go for part two. We're out of time. Thank you so much, Dr. Zahid. Brother Paul, thank you so much. And our listeners at home, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to have a part two next week, inshallah. So stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum.
If you want to advertise your business on Revive FM,